This is the final build video for the Tamiya Avante Black Special. So the last time, or in the last video, I had completed the rolling chassis with the electronics, and all I had to do from that point was to paint the body and the wing and the underside and apply the decals, do the driver figure, and that's pretty much it. So a few comments about the body painting experience. I did try to use the Tamiya smoke spray paint, and I went through an entire can of paint trying to do the body and the wing and the underside here. There's a Lexan chassis protector on the bottom, and I did about 3 or 4 coats, letting it dry each time before applying the next coat. And I found that with that smoke paint, the paint did not go on very uniformly, and even after 3 or 4 coats, it was still very transparent. So I was not able to get the smoke scheme to work very well. Fortunately, the smoke paint went on so transparent that I could just come in with like a flat black backing and completely sort of override whatever smoke paint had already existed on there. So it looks nice and black here, and there's no hint of what was previously or the first couple of coats of smoke paint on the body. So the black paint scheme looks pretty good, and the decals went on okay. I would point out that these decals are a little bit thinner than typical decals that you might see. So if you say put this guy on here and you find that maybe it wasn't aligned just right and you have to peel it off a little bit and try to realign it, the decals are so thin that you may actually stress the decals as you're trying to peel it off. So you really got to be careful to make sure that they're aligned as best as you can the first time you apply them. And if you do have to take them off to reposition them, use like a razor blade, or maybe even the backing to the decal you originally used to try to shove it in there under the decal and slowly and carefully, remove the decal from the body. I had to do that for a couple of these, but for the most part they went on okay. This decal here is a one-piece decal, and that was kind of tricky to put on. What some people do is use like hot soapy water, and they you can put that on the body to allow you to reposition the decal in real time and then let it set. I've done that before on other bodies and it works pretty well, but on this one I didn't do that. So but for this decal here, for example, what I did is I started up here and peeled off a little bit and made sure that this was aligned correctly, and then I would peel the backing off to about here past this corner, make sure the decal went around this corner well, and then peeled back to about here, made sure that everything aligned well beyond this corner and onto this surface, because there's one flat surface here and then another separate flat surface here and then another separate flat surface here. So this bit of the decal has to go on this one surface, and then I just peeled it back bit by bit to make sure that it aligned well. Of course, I repeated it on the other side. On the front here, there's just one silver decal here, so again you do the same thing. You start at one edge, peel back past one corner, make sure it aligns, and then peel back the rest of the way and make sure it aligns and make sure it you set it in place. This decal here is actually a 2-piece decal. One of them runs up one side and terminates at about the center, and then the other one runs up the other side. They do overlap by about 1/2 centimeter or so at the top, so if you're off just a little bit, you won't see a gap in the decals here, so that's nice. There's also a black liner decal that runs along the edge of the windows, and it's actually 2 decals, one that starts from the center here and ends at the center at the front, and another one that goes around the other edge. So again, you start here, for example, and then work your way down bit by bit, peeling the decal backing back piece by piece, just to make sure that it aligns well to the window edge. And then when you get to the front here, the window does not exactly terminate flush with the body certainly at this corner here. So you have to be a little careful making sure that you line up that black decal. It's a very thin liner around the front here. But otherwise, the decals seem to have gone on okay. I haven't run this yet or anything, so it still looks nice and shiny and clean. On the rear wing, you can maybe see it's a little tinted here because it's very hard to get the paint up into this region here. So I did a couple of coats, and it's still a little bit translucent, but it's not too bad. I mean, it looks okay. So I'm not terribly concerned about that. If you haven't seen before on other pictures or videos, this is the whole wing mount system here. So there's one post here, aluminum post, and another post here, and little body clips that hold them in place. So if you want to change the angle of the wing, you just take this body clip out, pull the post out, rotate the wing, and reinsert it into one of these other holes here, and then, you know, put the body clip back in, and you can change the wing angle. Now the wing itself is actually rather small. So for example, let's pull this out. This here is the wing that comes with the Proline Bulldog for the B44.1. And as you can see, it is quite a bit wider than the Avante wing. And the Proline high downforce rear wing, which I run on my associated buggies, is even wider than this guy. So this wing's pretty narrow, which means for the same rear downforce, you would need to run it at a much more aggressive angle. But again, you know, this isn't a modern racing chassis, so that's fine. Another thing to note about the body is that when you mount the body, this front bit here has to sort of, you have to tuck it in first and then fold the rest of the body back in order to mount the body. And as you do that enough times, you may actually break the front piece. So let me show you what I mean here. Okay, so if I take this off, all right, so I'll take it off here, right? I come around front. So you cut the body to fit around the shock tower here, but there's still a little kind of lip because the front nose is it gets wider again. So you have to sort of fiddle with it a little bit just to pull it off. Now, one of my friends at work who has an original Avante had mentioned that on his, the body snapped at around this point here. And the reason for that is because you have this hole here, which is for the body mounting post, and then you cut in on either side to fit the body between the shock tower. So there's only just a little bit of Lexan there. And if that cracks, then chances are, you know, this front piece will rip off. And getting a replacement body, if you look on eBay or Google Shopping or whatever, it's about $70, which is very much overpriced. So this is not something that you want to break. Okay, so let me put that to the side there. This is the driver figure. I painted it a little bit differently than what the manual suggests, although I did use all the same, the colors that they suggest. So I used, it was like a day glow or sunbeam orange or some kind of bright orange here for this control panel. Light gray here. I used light gray on the gloves here. Some kind of a dark blue here. Gunmetal for the helmet. I did some red seat belts with silver accents for the buckles. Some of the decals that go over the helmet don't go over very nicely. They tend to crease because you're putting them on this curved surface, so it's actually extremely difficult to get them to run smoothly over the helmet. And unfortunately, I was not able to get, especially the top decal here, to run nice and smooth over the helmet. This top piece is actually like a forked decal. So like where my two knuckles are, that's where it begins at the front here, and then you have to wrap it around and make the two fork pieces sort of merge together over the helmet. And there are a couple of creases there. That one was especially difficult to do. The side piece here, this control panel here, is supposed to be painted light gray, but I painted it flat black. I think personally that it looks a little bit more, I don't want to say realistic because this is kind of a futuristic cockpit, but to whatever extent you can call a futuristic cockpit realistic, I think this looks better with the black backing rather than the light gray. So that's how I did this guy. Okay. Now, the underside here, this little plastic bit, painted that one as well. And there are two screws here. There's one right here. Okay, and there's a body clip that goes in, and you screw that one in when you're building the front gearbox, and there's another one that goes in on the other side, and this whole piece hinges on these. So there's a body clip back here that you can pull this out. Let's see if I can do this with my left hand here. There we go. And then this whole thing rotates out like this, okay? And then on the other side, so you pull that whole thing out, and then there's a body clip here that holds like a battery brace, okay? It's this plastic bit here. You pull that out, you mount your battery in, you put this in, put the body clip in, pull this thing out, put that body clip in, and then put on the top body piece, and that's how you mount the battery. So you have to use actually 1, 2, 3, 4 body clips in order to get to the battery. So that's not entirely convenient, but that's what it is. Now, you may remember from the last video that the electronics were mounted a little bit differently. In particular, the receiver, I had it mounted flat. But because the driver figure takes up so much space, there's actually very little room in here to fit both the receiver and the speed control. So the wires do fit okay. Again, I didn't want to cut these wires, so I just kind of rolled them up here. But it is a pretty tight fit, and I would imagine that this would get pretty hot. So, you know, on the body here, I did not cut any holes, although you may want to cut, if you're really serious, maybe some venting holes here and here to supply some air to the speed control and to the motor. But I didn't want to do that to this body, which is so expensive. So that's pretty much it. I can't really think of much else to say for the aesthetic part of the build, you know, the driver figure and the body and everything. It went together okay. Now that I have it all built and it's nice and shiny and pretty, I'm not sure that I'll actually run it. I'm debating that because I don't want to get it dirty. But we'll see. Another interesting thing to note, by the way, is the antenna mount actually does not require you to cut a hole in the body. So let me just flip this around here. That's because the position that it mounts in is actually slightly outside of the body. Maybe it's hard to see here with the lighting. When you mount the body on, the antenna mount, it runs around here, okay? So you actually don't have to cut any holes in the body. That's pretty nice, at least for the antenna. So that's pretty much it. I hope you enjoyed what is now a 7-video series here for the build of the Avante Black Special. It was a very interesting build experience. I had some ups and downs with it. I do maintain that this chassis is overpriced, but if you have the money, if you can afford it, and you really want it, it's, on the whole, I think you'll enjoy the build. So that's it.